Good day, viewers. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the news today. Please feel free to share what you think and feel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.
The African colonies, they imposed on them comprehensive agreements relating to many things, the military, the economy, language, culture, everything. So that rebellion against neocolonialism is to overthrow that system which French imperialism imposed on these African countries as they achieved their independence. Many years ago, we worked with the people of Cote d'Ivoire to try and overcome the problem challenge as it was then. And one of the things I found, I didn't know it until then, that this French agreement, as far as Cote d'Ivoire is concerned, it provided for the establishment of a military base in Abidjan in the context of a joint security arrangement, that this military base is charged with ensuring the security both of Cote d'Ivoire and France. And the commander of that French force was authorized to intervene in Cote d'Ivoire without reference to the government of Cote d'Ivoire in any way he thought fit in order to secure the security of France and Cote d'Ivoire. So the general in charge of the French forces could walk into the television and radio stations and take over and give instructions. It was in the agreement to secure both Cote d'Ivoire and France. That's how it was put. I don't know if this military agreement is the same for the other countries. Military agreement which Senegal has just repudiated, and indeed all these other countries have just repudiated. I don't know about the other elements to those French agreements which have got to do with finance, with the economy, with language, with culture, and so on. And I'm saying these three countries in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, the soldiers, they have said this part of their task is to defeat the system of French neocolonialism. It's a critically important part of this dialogue. And what we have to do is very important in terms of the future of our continent. Very challenging. Let me tell you something about in connection with that. Once I visited one of the African countries for Francophone, and then as we're leaving, one of the ministers in the cabinet took me to the airport. And in the car, he gave me his business card. Now, President, next time you come, please contact me so that we can have this, continue to have this very, very interesting discussion. So I took the card, put it in my pocket. I said, no, definitely, Minister, we'll do that. So as we're flying, I look at the card. On one side, it's got his name, Minister, and contact numbers. You flip it, it's got his name, Minister, contact numbers in Paris. So this side, it was his country, the other side was France. That's part of the challenge we have when the soldiers say, we've got to defeat neocolonialism in our countries. This is part of what they say. You've got people in our own countries, African countries, who do that and have no sense of shame that you've got this two sorts of addresses on one business card. But I'm saying, colleagues, that that's a challenge we face in support of the rebellions in the Sahel states to defeat French neocolonialism. The question together we have got to answer is, what is it that we do to support the people of this country of the Sahel to take the continent forward in a very, very important way? As I was saying, Colonel Kennel from Ghana, I'm going to come back to you to say what is to be done. There was a question that was posed about the Horn of Africa, I think by the chairperson of our foundation, who asked about integration of the Horn of Africa. I used to chair a panel of the African Union, which was charged with the task of looking at this matter of peace and stability and so on in the Horn of Africa. So one of the things we did was we thought that let's go to each one of the, Fawzia mentioned these 8 countries that are in the Horn. Let's go to each one of them to say, you are part of the Horn of Africa. On these issues of possible integration of the Horn, what's your view? And in these countries, we would meet the government, we would meet the parliament, we would meet civil society, so that we consult everybody, not just government. What is your view about these issues? Is it possible to have security arrangements looking at the Horn? Is it possible to have economic integration? In all of these questions. And what is to be done? Government, civil society, parliament, everybody. We went to Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, posing the same question and getting responses. We're going to start with Sudan when an uprising started, which removed President Bashir. So to suspend that, as we're considering dealing with Ethiopia, war broke out in Ethiopia. So we referred the matter of that resolution of that conflict in Ethiopia between Addis Ababa and Mekele, between Addis Ababa and Tigray. We raised the matter with the Peace and Security Council of the OAU to say, can you please sort out this thing? Get this thing peace, because it's this, apart from anything else, we can't continue our work of engaging these countries about integration of the Horn until this war is sorted out. And practically, they all refused. The Peace and Security Council of the African Union refused to deal with the matter of the conflict in Ethiopia. When we wrote the letter to the chair of the Peace and Security Council for that month, he didn't respond until he had finished his month. Then he responded and said, thank you very much for a very important letter. Please ask my successor. They refused to deal with it. And the problem about it is that stopped the engagement on the issue of the Horn of Africa. That process towards its integration. I think one of the colleagues who talked about this mentioned is that with regard to the Horn, you also have got to deal with its other neighbors across the Red Sea. So we'd already been to Qatar, we've been to Egypt, we're going to Saudi Arabia, we're going to go to the UAE about this matter, because you can't sort out the problems of the Horn of Africa without that kind of engagement. The matter has ceased, it's not moving. And in reality, my view, my sense, is that the Horn of Africa is developing in a negative way. If you look at Somalia, the Al-Shabaab is sitting all over Somalia right up to the boundaries of Mogadishu. And indeed, the people have said to me that even the government of Somalia really, in terms of Mogadishu, is confined to what is called the green zone. People have talked about tensions that have arisen between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which may break out into war, or problems that have arisen among the Tigrayans. So I'm saying, colleagues, if you look at the matter practically about what is happening in the Horn of Africa, the signals are negative. But you can't just interpret the thing and say, how do we change it? So one of the things that is going to happen is that this panel of ours, which was mandated many years ago to deal with the Horn of Africa, we are going to submit a new report to the African Union in order to give it the possibility to the African Union to resume the discussion about the future of the Horn of Africa, which has died. So I'm saying the practical reality about the Horn is that the Horn of Africa is moving in the wrong direction with regard to all of these matters that were taught about disintegration, peace, stability, and all that. Sudan is at war. South Sudan is whatever South Sudan is doing. Somalia is at war. All over the place. One of our colleagues mentioned that Djibouti is hosting so many bases there, Chinese, American, this and that and the other. As this dialogue, we say we have interpreted the Horn in these various ways. What is it that we do to change it? And in my view, to change the Horn is not only to deal with the Horn as a whole, but also to deal with its individual component parts. You've got to engage the Sudanese. We tried to engage the Sudanese last year. Unfortunately, all factions came. Government, SRF, civil society, to say, what do we do? That problem remains. What do we do to assist the people of South Sudan? They thought that we were going to have elections, I think by the end of this year, and they can't. Conditions don't exist to elect a new government. Our colleagues from South Sudan here will remember a very, very important document. In 2004, there was a lot of tension within the leadership of the SPLM, SPLA. So there was an emergency conference in December 2004 to sort out these problems. Unfortunately, somebody kept very detailed minutes of that conference. That's how I get to know about it. And the minutes that are written, not in a normal way, in the sense, abnormal in this sense, that they would have the names of the speakers. Thabo Mbeki said the following thing. Smangmang said the following thing. So you've got a whole picture of the leadership of the SPLM and the views that they expressed. One of the decisions at the end of that meeting was, next month, January 2005, we are signing the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, which is going to end the war between us and Sudan in Khartoum and create the possibility for a referendum for us as South Sudanese to decide our future. Can we please shelve our differences and sign this thing, document which gives us possibilities, and then we can continue to discuss our problems. Interesting things, colleagues, the reason I mentioned this paper. If you looked at those minutes today and looked at South Sudan today, you would find that a lot of those actors that appear here in those minutes are still active today. John Garang has passed away. May his soul rest in peace. Others have. But a lot of your players, President Salva Kiir, Riek Machar, they are all in this. I'm mentioning that to say that we've got to, in terms of this dialogue, say what is it that we do to help the people of South Sudan. You read those minutes and you say, but it's the same people who were quarreling in December 2004. They are still quarreling now, 21 years later. Same people, probably same issues. How do you deal with that problem? To understand, to interpret the problem, but to change it, it becomes a critically important issue. I'll come back to that question of change. So that we're going to have to do something about the Horn of Africa in that detailed sense, not only the Horn as a region, but some of the individual states in the Horn. Our colleagues from the DRC will differ me on this. You know, we, as everybody here knows, we got our democracy here in 1994. And many people said, miracle, miracle. And the country developed quite well in many respects for a period maybe of about 15 years, let us say. The economy, you know, the number of people employed between 1994 and 2008 grew by 6 million. From 8 million employed to 14 million employed during that period. So this notion that this was jobless growth is a lot of nonsense. His economy expanded, grew, and that's why you're able to take on these millions of new employees. The new constitution and the constitution, and all of these things belong to this period. But if you look at the next 15 years up to today, it's an opposite story. The country has gone in exactly the opposite direction. It's because when we were busy celebrating in 1994, toasting one another and doing all sorts of things, there were some people who were saying there's nothing to celebrate. They were saying to themselves, a luta continua. We are going to defeat this ANC. And they planned and they tried, and indeed, that's part of the reason this country is going the opposite direction. Because they are succeeding. I was mentioning this, not that we discuss it, but in order to come back to the DRC, a similar political change took place in the DRC in 1960. There were people who were not happy that the DRC got its independence, but they couldn't stop it. There were people who were not happy with our liberation in 1994, but couldn't stop it, but decided to find their ways of intervening in order to defeat it, to defeat this revolution. In the Congo, and we had 15 years to do our thing. The Congolese never had that possibility. Patrice Lumumba gets elected prime minister, and in 6 months' time he's dead. So the Congolese never had the possibility to implement this vision that they had for this future Congo. Somebody mentioned just now, Patrice Lumumba. That revolutionary transformation of Congo, which was visualized by that liberation movement, was never allowed to take root. It was interrupted within a year. They tried to fight back and so on, but in any case, it was defeated. I was saying that our colleagues from the DRC might differ with me, but it has always seemed to me that part of what needs to happen among the Congolese is to go back to this interrupted revolution. To say to themselves, why did the imperialist countries panic so much that within a year of the independence of the Congo, they intervened in order to stop that process? There was something that was said by the Lumbist movement. This is the vision we have for the Congo. It's what we want to make of it, not frighten these people. In the end, Lumumba died. Other people died. And as far as I know, I've never seen any report. Mbusa Nyamwisi is here. Maybe he'll correct me. An assessment by the Congolese to say the thing that was started then got disrupted in its infancy. Why don't we go back there? I raised this matter with the late Laurent Kabila. Late, may he rest in peace. I raised it with him. I said, but it seems to me that we must go back to what Lumumba and his colleagues stood for. Say that process got interrupted by hostile forces. How do we resume in order to recapture that political vision and that vision that there was there for the Congo, which frightened these other people? It's never happened. Whether the Congolese can then solve these individual problems which they describe correctly, that's not just a problem of the crisis in the Eastern Congo, violence. It's problems all over the country. The word polycrisis was used with regard to Mozambique. It equally applies, I think, to the DRC. Without addressing this political context, I'm not quite sure that we'll be able to make the progress that we need about the Congo. I'm saying maybe I might be wrong about this, but I think it's very important to understand this. What was this vision? Did the Sun City Agreement, did it capture that vision? Maybe it did, I don't know. And incidentally, I must say about this Sun City Agreement and similar agreements. My view about negotiations, diplomacy, negotiating agreements is the only way to get any agreement about any country to hold, the agreement to hold, to be implementable, must be owned by the people of the country. You can't come at Thabo Mbeki, you think you are very clever, and you impose an agreement on these people who say, no, they'll do this, do that, and the other. They might, out of respect, say, yes, we agree with you, President. As soon as you've turned your back, they say, this is not our agreement, this is agreement. The consequence of that, if you look at the Sun City Agreement, that's a Congolese agreement. We sat there to provide them with cups of coffee and tea and sandwiches and so on. But it's them who talked about the Congo and said, this is what we do, what we need, and so on. It was a Congolese agreement negotiated by the Congolese among themselves, and the basis for the constitution that was then adopted afterwards. It was Congolese. We're back there. Whatever we would do as a foundation about the Congo, it depends on what the Congolese say. It must depend on what the Congolese say. I think Ambassador William Trapo was trying to communicate that. The Congo sits there in the middle of Africa. It's bordering 9 other countries. It's quite obvious that all of these things that we talk about, the renaissance of the continent, the unity of the continent, and so on, they can't be achieved without the Congo. The Congo is very, very central to the future of the whole continent. And therefore, we have to be interested in the Congo, but how we intervene, what to do, therefore the change that we must contribute, surely must be determined by what the Congolese people say. So this is a task which I think our Congolese colleagues have, because you've got a room full here of people who are saying, long live the DRC. But a peaceful, successful, developing, integrated DRC. But they must give us a possibility for the rest of us to intervene, to assist them to produce that kind of Congo. I think it's our obligation. The other country I'm going to be visiting, I hope soon, is Mozambique. The reason for that is because President Chapo twice or thrice has said to me, you have to come. So I said, President, I'm on my way. And part of the reason for that is because I think, as all of us saw, there's a lot of upheaval in Mozambique around the presidential elections, the recent ones. Lots of people died. Lots of commotion there. One of the candidates, Mr. Venancio Monzane, he came to see me to talk about this. And I said to him that it seemed to me that one of the things that we as the leadership of Mozambique need to do, fortunately the violence has come down and this President Chapo has not been sworn in, is to look at this task of the reconciliation of people of Mozambique among themselves. Because these tensions around these elections have really produced so much divisions, polarization. So that's part of the reason that I'm going to see President Chapo, who fortunately has taken the same position. There needs to be reconciliation among the people of Mozambique. And I'm mentioning that, colleagues, because I will ask him about Cabo Delgado. Because if using this formula I'm trying to suggest, the philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The task, however, is to change it. On the Cabo Delgado matter, I think we failed even in the interpretation. That's why you have many people saying the whole, I'm confused, I'm confused, I'm confused. Because that interpretation was not terribly helpful.